The morning air carried the scent of freshly cut grass as Dr. Maya Wilson pulled her car into the parking lot of Oak Ridge Country Club. She'd been a member for 3 years now, but sometimes it still felt like her first day. Maya checked her watch, 7:45 a.m., giving her just enough time to change her shoes and warm up before her 8:15 tea time. The sun had barely risen above the tree line, casting long shadows across the immaculate grounds. Maya loved these early mornings when the course felt like it belonged just to her, and the birds singing in the towering oak trees. She took a deep breath, savoring the moment before grabbing her golf bag from the trunk. "Good morning, Dr. Wilson," called Pete, the elderly groundskeeper who was one of the first friendly faces Maya had encountered when she joined Oak Ridge. "Perfect day for a round, isn't it?" "Couldn't ask for better," Maya replied with a warm smile. The weather was indeed perfect, clear skies with just enough breeze to keep things comfortable. Maya had been looking forward to this round all week. Between her research at the university and the papers she was reviewing, Sunday mornings on the golf course had become her sanctuary. Inside the clubhouse, Maya noticed the usual mix of reactions. Some members greeted her with genuine warmth, while others offered tight smiles that never reached their eyes. A few pretended not to see her at all. After 3 years, she'd grown accustomed to being one of only 2 black female members at Oak Ridge. Though accustomed didn't mean it didn't still sting sometimes, Maya changed into her golf shoes and headed to the practice green. She wasn't a professional by any means, but her methodical approach to the game had steadily improved her handicap. What had started as a hobby recommended by her doctor to reduce stress had become a passion. There was something about the precision required, the physics of the perfect swing, that appealed to her analytical mind. After sinking a few practice putts, Maya headed to the first tee where the starter, Bill, was organizing the morning groups. "Morning, Maya," Bill said cheerfully.
"Got you set up with a threesome that needed a fourth."
"Hope that's all right." Of course, Maya nodded, though she felt a small knot form in her stomach. Playing with strangers was always a bit of a gamble. As if on cue, 3 men approached the tee box. The first, a slender man in his 30s with a friendly face, extended his hand. "Hi there, I'm Tom. First time at Oak Ridge, so go easy on me." The second man, heavy-set with a ruddy complexion, introduced himself as Hank. "Pleasure," he said simply with a polite nod. The third man, who appeared to be in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive-looking golf outfit, gave Maya a once-over before turning to Bill. "We're playing with her?" he asked, not bothering to lower his voice. "Yes, Mr. Harrington," Bill replied, his tone professional but firm. "Dr. Wilson is a member and was scheduled for this tea time." Richard Harrington turned back to Maya with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Well then, I suppose we should get started. Wouldn't want to hold up the course." Maya felt her shoulders tense but extended her hand anyway. "Maya Wilson. Nice to meet you all." Richard barely touched her hand before withdrawing his own. "Richard Harrington. I've been a member here for 25 years. Shall we tee off?" Tom suggested, clearly sensing the tension. As they decided the order, Richard made a show of checking his watch. "Ladies first, I suppose," he said with a slight smirk. "Though we might want to set a pace timer if we're going to finish before sunset." Maya ignored the jab and took her position at the tee. She went through her pre-shot routine, something she'd practiced countless times. A deep breath in, visualizing the ball's path, a slight adjustment to her stance. "First time golfing in proper clothes?" Richard commented, eyeing her perfectly appropriate golf attire with an air of disdain. Maya paused, then continued her routine without acknowledging him. She swung smoothly, connecting with a satisfying crack. The ball sailed down the fairway, landing in perfect position for her approach shot. "Not bad," Richard said with surprise in his voice. "Beginner's luck, I suppose." Tom whistled. "That was a great drive." "Thanks," Maya replied, stepping back to make room for the next player. As Tom prepared to tee off, Richard leaned toward Maya. "Been meaning to ask the board about our membership criteria lately," he said quietly. "Seems like they've been letting just about anyone in these days." Maya felt a familiar ache in her chest but kept her expression neutral. She'd earned her place here both professionally and as a golfer. Richard didn't know that she'd been invited to join by the club president himself after they'd met at a university fundraiser where she was the keynote speaker. The group moved down the fairway, with Richard continuing to make comments just loud enough for Maya to hear. When she pulled out a 7-iron for her approach shot, he chuckled. That's ambitious, he said. Might want to use a 9 or even a pitching wedge. This isn't mini golf, dear. Maya knew her club selection was perfect for the distance. She'd spent hours studying the course, understanding the typical wind patterns and how the greens played. Without responding, she swung confidently. The ball arced through the air, landed softly on the green, and rolled to within 10 feet of the hole. Richard's eyebrows shot up, but he quickly masked his surprise. Got a little lucky with the wind there. Tom and Hank exchanged glances but said nothing as they prepared for their own shots. By the third hole, Richard's comments had become more frequent and more pointed. When Maya suggested they play ready golf to keep up the pace, Richard scoffed. I didn't realize you were an expert on golf etiquette, he said. But I suppose you people always want to change the rules to suit yourselves. Tom cleared his throat uncomfortably. I think ready golf makes sense. The course is getting busy behind us. Maya took a deep breath and focused on her game. She reminded herself why she was here. For the joy of the game, the peace of the morning, the satisfaction of a well-executed shot. Richard's behavior was unpleasant, but unfortunately not unfamiliar. At the fourth hole, a challenging par 3 over water, Maya selected her club while Richard watched with a smirk. I usually caddy for my wife on holes like these, he said. Some people just aren't built for certain sports. No shame in it. Maya lined up her shot, trying to tune out Richard's voice. Her concentration was momentarily broken when he added, My cleaning lady tried golf once. Hilarious to watch. Some things just aren't in the blood, you know? The comment stung. But Maya had learned long ago not to give people like Richard the satisfaction of seeing her rattled. She reset, took her stance, and executed a perfect swing. The ball sailed over the water hazard and landed softly on the green. You know, Richard said as they walked toward the green, my colleague has a daughter who got a golf scholarship. Affirmative action is really something, isn't it? She probably wouldn't have made the team at all 20 years ago. Maya remained silent, though her jaw tightened slightly. She reminded herself that Richard knew nothing about her. Not that she'd played on her college team. Not that she'd earned her PhD in physics with a specialty in motion dynamics. Not that she'd published papers on the mathematics of the perfect golf swing. By the sixth hole, Hank and Tom had started creating distance between themselves and Richard, clearly uncomfortable with his behavior. They made a point of complimenting Maya's shots and asking her advice on reading the greens. Been playing long? Tom asked as they waited for Richard to find his ball in the rough. About 7 years, Maya replied. Started in graduate school as a stress reliever. What did you study? Hank asked. Before Maya could answer, Richard returned, irritated after losing a stroke. Let's keep it moving, he interrupted. Social hour can wait for the clubhouse. As they approached the 9th hole, the halfway point of their round, Maya was maintaining her composure but feeling emotionally drained. Richard's comments had become like background noise, unpleasant but something she could push to the periphery of her awareness. She reminded herself that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. Her membership fees were the same. Her love for the game was genuine. Her skills spoke for themselves. On the 9th tee, Richard hit a beautiful drive down the center of the fairway and turned with a smug expression. That's how it's done, he announced. Been playing since I was 6 years old. Some things you just have to grow up with to really understand. Maya stepped up to the tee, going through her routine methodically. As she addressed the ball, Richard coughed loudly. She stepped back, reset, and tried again. This time, he jingled the change in his pocket. Sorry, he said with a smile that suggested he was anything but nervous habit. Maya took a deep breath, remembering her training, her research, her understanding of the physics involved in the perfect golf swing. She blocked out everything else. Richard's behavior, the weight of being constantly underestimated, the exhaustion of always having to prove herself worthy of spaces like this. She swung, connecting perfectly. The ball sailed even farther than Richard's, landing in prime position. Richard's smile faltered. Interesting technique, he said. Not traditional, but I guess it works for you. As they walked down the fairway, Maya pondered whether to continue the back nine or make an excuse to leave. She loved golf, but days like this made it hard to remember why. What she didn't know was that the back nine would bring a revelation that would change everything, not just for her day, but for Richard's understanding of just who he had been taunting all morning. Maya stood at the 10th tee, contemplating whether to continue the round or find an excuse to leave. The first 9 holes with Richard had been exhausting. his comments growing from subtle digs to outright condescension. But something inside her refused to give him the satisfaction of driving her away. "Ladies and gentlemen, shall we continue?" Richard announced, gesturing grandly toward the tee box as if he owned it. The morning sun now hung higher in the sky, warming the air and glinting off the small lake that bordered the 10th fairway. Tom and Hank had grown noticeably quiet, their initial friendliness dampened by the uncomfortable atmosphere Richard had created. They exchanged glances as Richard set his ball on the tee. "Watch and learn," he said with a wink toward Maya. His swing was technically sound, and the ball flew straight down the fairway, though not particularly far. He turned with a self-satisfied smile. That's what 30 years of country club membership gets you. When it was Maya's turn, Richard stood uncomfortably close as if attempting to throw off her concentration. She could feel his eyes examining her stance, her grip, her posture, looking for flaws to point out. "Your grip is all wrong," he said loudly enough for a nearby group to hear. "Ladies tend to hold the club like they're gripping a garden trowel. Here, let me show you." Before Maya could respond, he reached for her hands. She stepped back quickly. "I'm comfortable with my grip, thank you," she said firmly, the first time she'd directly pushed back against his advice. Richard's eyebrows shot up, clearly surprised by her resistance. "Just trying to help. No need to be sensitive about it." Maya took her stance again, blocking out Richard's presence. She had spent countless hours refining her swing, applying her knowledge of physics to optimize every element. The ball soared down the fairway, outdriving Richard's by at least 20 yards. Tom whistled low. "Nice shot." "Thanks," Maya replied, replacing her driver in her bag. Richard's face tightened. "Well, distance isn't everything in golf. It's precision that counts." As they walked down the fairway, Richard fell into step beside Maya. "You know," he said in a voice meant to sound casual, "my company sponsors a youth golf program in underprivileged areas. You remind me of some of those kids. Raw talent but no refinement. Maybe you should look into something like that." Maya kept her eyes forward, focusing on her breathing. She'd heard versions of this comment countless times before. The implication that her presence in spaces like Oak Ridge was due to charity or diversity initiatives rather than merit. "Actually," Tom interjected, having overheard, "Maya's swing looks pretty refined to me." "What's your handicap, Maya?" "I'm down to a 7, she replied. Richard scoffed. "A 7? From the ladies' tees, I assume?" "No," Maya said simply. "Standard tees." Richard's expression flickered with something, surprise perhaps, or disbelief. A 7 handicap was respectable for any recreational golfer, man or woman, but he quickly recovered. "Well, numbers can be misleading. The real test is how you handle pressure." The 11th hole was a dogleg right with bunkers guarding the corner. The smart play was to hit straight down the fairway and approach the green on the second shot. But Richard opted for a more aggressive line, trying to cut the corner. "This is how the big boys play," he announced, setting up his shot. His ball started right but didn't turn enough, disappearing into the trees. When Tom and Hank played it safe down the middle, Richard muttered about boring golf. When Maya did the same, landing in perfect position, he said nothing. They found Richard's ball nestled against the base of a pine tree with no clear shot to the green. His face flushed with frustration as he hacked at the ball, barely advancing it back to the fairway. "Tough break," Maya offered, the kind of generic sympathy golfers routinely exchange. "These trees shouldn't even be here," Richard snapped. "I've told the grounds committee a dozen times." By the 12th hole, a beautiful par 3 over water, Richard's mood had soured further. He took practice swings with excessive force, muttering to himself about the speed of the greens and the placement of the pins. As they waited for the group ahead to clear the green, Maya studied the hole. The pin was positioned in a tricky spot, behind a bunker with the water looming close beyond. "The play here," Richard announced to no one in particular, "is to aim for the center of the green and take your par. Anything else is foolish." Maya considered this, then said quietly, "Actually, there's a small landing area to the right of the pin. If you come in with enough height and a bit of spin, the slope will feed the ball toward the hole." Richard laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "I've been playing this course for decades, dear. But please, by all means, try your little theory." When it was his turn, Richard aimed for the center of the green as he'd advised. But his shot fell short, catching the front bunker. His expression darkened as he slammed his club back into his bag. Maya stepped up, selected her 7-iron and took a few measured practice swings. She could feel Richard watching, waiting for her to fail. She visualized the shot exactly as she'd described, high with a soft landing using the contour of the green. Her swing was smooth and controlled. The ball rose in a perfect arc, landed precisely in the small pocket she'd identified, and rolled toward the pin, stopping about 8 feet away. Tom and Hank both exclaimed in appreciation. "That was exactly like you called it," Tom said. Richard said nothing as he yanked his sand wedge from his bag and marched toward the bunker. His first attempt to escape the sand failed, the ball hitting the lip and rolling back. The second shot went sailing over the green, nearly finding the water. By the time he finally got his ball to stop on the putting surface, he'd taken 3 additional strokes. "The sand is too soft," he complained. "Completely inconsistent." Maya said nothing, but as she walked to the green, she bent down and felt the sand with her fingers, noting its texture and density. Years of studying the physics of projectiles through different mediums had given her insights that most golfers never considered. When she sank her 8-foot putt for birdie, Richard barely acknowledged it, but she noticed Tom and Hank exchanging impressed glances. The 13th hole brought more of the same, Richard growing increasingly frustrated with his own game while continuing to offer unwanted advice to Maya. When she pulled out her rangefinder to check the distance to the pin, he laughed. "All the gadgets in the world won't replace talent and experience," he said. "Golf isn't a science experiment." Maya almost smiled at the irony of his statement, but kept her thoughts to herself. By the 14th hole, Richard's comments had taken on a more desperate quality, as if he needed to reassert his superiority through words since his play wasn't doing the job. "You know, I've played with pros before," he said as they waited at the tee. "Real professionals. They all say my swing is textbook perfect. Just having an off day today." "We all have those," Maya replied neutrally. "I once gave Tiger Woods advice on his putting stance," Richard continued, the claim so outlandish that Tom couldn't suppress a snort of disbelief. Richard shot him a glare. The 15th hole was a long par 5 with trouble all along the right side. As they stood on the tee, Richard began offering unsolicited swing tips to Maya again. "You're rotating your hips too early," he said, standing uncomfortably close. "It's a common mistake for beginners. Here, watch how I do it." His drive sliced badly, heading directly for the hazard on the right. "Did you rotate your hips too early there?" Tom asked with barely concealed sarcasm. Richard's face flushed deep red. The sun was in my eyes. As they searched for his ball in the thick rough, Richard's frustration boiled over. "This is ridiculous. The rough is unmaintained. I'm going to have a word with the grounds crew." "Found it," Hank called, pointing to a ball half buried in the tall grass. Richard's recovery shot barely made it back to the fairway. Meanwhile, Maya's second shot on the par 5 was a beautifully struck 3-wood that ran up onto the front edge of the green, giving her a chance at an eagle putt. "Lucky," Richard muttered. By the 16th hole, even Tom and Hank had had enough. When Richard began another lecture about proper course etiquette while breaking several rules himself, Tom finally spoke up. "Maybe we could just enjoy the round without all the commentary?" Richard looked genuinely shocked that anyone would challenge him. "I'm simply sharing my expertise," he said stiffly. "Maya seems to be doing just fine without it," Hank noted, gesturing to the scorecard where she led the group by several strokes. "It's easier when you don't know enough to be nervous," Richard replied. "Ignorance is bliss, as they say." The 17th hole brought another challenging par 3, with the green surrounded by bunkers. As they studied the shot, Maya noticed the flag barely moving in a gentle breeze. "There's a crosswind up there," she said quietly, more to herself than the others. "It'll push the ball left if you don't account for it." Richard overheard and rolled his eyes dramatically. "Now she's a meteorologist too," he said to Tom, who pointedly ignored him, but when their shots landed, Richard's was indeed pushed left, finding another bunker, while Maya's held its line perfectly to the center of the green. As they approached the final hole, the tension in the group was palpable. Richard had grown increasingly sullen, his earlier bravado replaced by simmering resentment. Maya had maintained her composure throughout, focusing on each shot rather than his behavior. What none of them knew was that waiting near the 18th green was Dr. Philip Chen, the university's department head and an avid golfer himself. His chance appearance was about to change everything, revealing exactly who Richard had been taunting all morning. and the 18th hole at Oak Ridge was a long par 4 with the clubhouse visible beyond the green. After nearly 4 hours of Richard's comments, Maya felt mentally drained but determined to finish strong. Her scorecard showed she was playing one of her best rounds ever despite the circumstances. "Last hole," Tom said with poorly disguised relief. The tension in their foursome had made the back nine feel twice as long as the front. Richard stepped up to the tee first, still fuming from his poor performance on the previous holes. "Let me show you how to finish a round properly," he announced, though no one had asked for a demonstration. His swing was rushed and angry, sending the ball slicing into the right rough again. When it was Maya's turn, she took a moment to center herself. The fairway stretched before her wide and inviting in the early afternoon sun. She had played this hole dozens of times and knew exactly how she wanted to attack it. "You might want to club down," Richard offered, unable to help himself. Women tend to overestimate their distance. Maya ignored him and set up with her driver. Her swing was fluid and balanced, the result of countless hours of practice and her deep understanding of the physics involved. The ball sailed straight and true, landing in the center of the fairway and rolling another 30 yards. "Show off," Richard muttered, stomping toward his ball. Tom gave Maya an appreciative nod. "That was beautiful. You've clearly played a lot of golf." "Thanks," Maya replied. "It's a game that rewards study and practice." They found Richard's ball nestled in thick rough beside a cluster of pine trees. His recovery shot clipped a branch and dropped into a fairway bunker, leading to a stream of curses that had Hank glancing around apologetically at other golfers. As they approached the green, Maya noticed a small crowd had gathered on the clubhouse patio. Sunday mornings often brought spectators enjoying brunch while watching golfers finish their rounds. Today she spotted a familiar face among them, Dr. Philip Chen, the head of the university's physics department and her research mentor. Dr. Chen was deep in conversation with another man, but glanced up as their group approached. His face brightened with recognition when he saw Maya. Richard, still stewing over his poor shot, continued his running commentary as they walked. "The real problem with golf today is that they're letting anyone play. In my day, there was a certain standard, you know. Not just skill, but understanding of tradition." Maya concentrated on her approach shot, a tricky one with the pin positioned behind a deep bunker. She selected her 8-iron, factoring in the slight headwind and the firmness of the green. "That's too much club," Richard said immediately. "You'll go well over." Ignoring him, Maya executed her shot perfectly. The ball landed softly on the green, took 2 small bounces, and rolled to within 5 feet of the hole. "Lucky again," Richard said, though even he couldn't muster much conviction. As they walked toward the green, Dr. Chen approached the edge of the patio, waving enthusiastically. "Dr. Wilson, what a wonderful surprise." Maya smiled and waved back. "Hello, Dr. Chen. Enjoying your Sunday?" Richard looked between them, confusion evident on his face. "Doctor?" he questioned. Dr. Chen called out, "I just finished reviewing your latest paper. Absolutely brilliant work. The committee is thrilled with your findings." By now, Tom and Hank had also turned to look at Maya with newfound curiosity. "What paper is he talking about?" Tom asked. Before Maya could answer, Dr. Chen had made his way down from the patio and was walking briskly toward their group, accompanied by a tall man in a navy blazer with an Oak Ridge member pin. "Dr. Wilson, I couldn't believe it when I saw you out here," Dr. Chen said, reaching them. "I was just telling Dean Thompson about your research. The applications for professional athletics are extraordinary." The man in the blazer, apparently Dean Thompson, nodded enthusiastically. "Dr. Chen has been singing your praises all morning. Your work on motion dynamics is apparently revolutionizing how we understand sports mechanics." Richard stood frozen, his mouth slightly open as he tried to process this new information. "Thank you both," Maya said with genuine appreciation. "We're still in the early stages, but the results are promising." "Early stages?" Dr. Chen laughed. "Your paper on the mathematics of the perfect golf swing is already being implemented by 3 PGA training academies. And I heard the Olympic Committee reached out about your biomechanical analysis techniques." Tom turned to Maya with widened eyes. "You're a scientist? Studying golf?" Maya nodded. "I'm a physicist specializing in motion dynamics. Golf is one of my research areas. It's a perfect laboratory for testing theories about projectile motion through different mediums." She's being modest, Dr. Chen added. Dr. Wilson is one of the leading experts in applied physics in sports. Her doctoral research changed how we understand the mechanics of precision movements. Richard's face had gone from red to pale. Doctoral research? He repeated weakly. Dean Thompson nodded. Dr. Wilson has been a tremendous asset to our university. Her work bridges theoretical physics and practical applications in ways we've never seen before. The small crowd on the patio had grown, with several people leaning over the railing to listen. Among them, Maya recognized the club president and 2 board members. I had no idea, Tom said, looking at Maya with newfound respect. Though it explains your approach to the course. You really do see it differently than most people, don't you? Maya smiled. Golf is fascinating from a physics perspective. Every swing is an experiment in energy transfer and environmental factors. The variables are nearly endless, Dr. Chen beamed proudly. And that's why her analysis software is being adopted by golf courses around the country. It helps players understand exactly how different factors affect their game. Richard had gone completely silent. His earlier bravado evaporated. He fidgeted with his glove, clearly uncomfortable as the conversation continued around him. Actually, Dean Thompson said, we were just discussing the potential for a specialized research center focused on sports physics. Dr. Wilson would head the program. Of course, that's still in the proposal stage, Maya clarified modestly. Hank, who had been quiet throughout the exchange, suddenly laughed. And here I was just trying not to embarrass myself in front of what I thought was another regular golfer. Instead, I've been playing with someone who literally wrote the book on the physics of golf. Not a book yet, Maya corrected with a smile. Just a few research papers and a chapter in a textbook. Being too humble again, Dr. Chen chided gently. Your work is being taught in universities across the country. The club president had made his way down from the patio now and approached their growing circle. Dr. Wilson, I had no idea you were out playing today. I would have come out earlier to say hello. Just enjoying my Sunday round, Maya replied. Dr. Wilson gave a fascinating lecture at our fundraiser last year, the president explained to the others. That's how we convinced her to join Oak Ridge. Having a member of her caliber is an honor for the club. Richard looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. His earlier comments about membership standards now hung in the air, unspoken but remembered by everyone who had heard them. Tom cleared his throat. Well, we should probably finish the hole and clear the way for the next group. They returned to their game, with Richard now completely silent. When it was his turn to hit from the bunker, his hands were visibly shaking. His shot barely made it onto the green, leaving him a long, difficult putt. As they reached the putting surface, Maya noticed several more people had gathered to watch. Word had apparently spread about her presence on the course. A bit of an audience for our finish, Tom commented. They're here to see Dr. Wilson, Dean Thompson said. Our university's rising star. Maya tried to focus on her putt despite the attention. The 5-footer was straight but fast, requiring a delicate touch. She read the green carefully, noting the subtle slopes that would affect the ball's path. The green has a 1.2-degree slope here, she said quietly to herself. With a stimp reading of about 11, she sank the putt smoothly, finishing her round with a birdie. The small crowd applauded, which would have been unusual for a regular Sunday foursome. Richard's long putt stopped well short of the hole. He quickly tapped in for a double bogey, his eyes fixed on the ground, avoiding contact with anyone. As they walked off the green, Dr. Chen fell into step beside Maya. I was hoping to catch you, actually. The International Journal of Sports Physics wants you to be their guest editor for the special issue on golf dynamics. I'd be honored, Maya replied. Wonderful. And perhaps you could give a demonstration at the faculty symposium next month. Show how theory translates to practice? As they continued their conversation, Richard lagged behind, the full weight of his behavior throughout the round clearly sinking in. The man he had spent hours talking down to and attempting to humiliate was not only a better golfer than him, but a renowned scientist, whose work was transforming the very game he claimed to understand so well. Tom approached Richard as they neared the clubhouse. Quite a morning, huh? Never know who might meet on the golf course, Richard nodded weakly, watching as Maya was greeted by more colleagues and club members, all eager to speak with her. I had no idea, he said quietly, the bluster completely gone from his voice. Maybe that's the point, Tom replied before walking away, leaving Richard alone with the consequences of his assumptions. The clubhouse terrace buzzed with conversation as Maya chatted with Dr. Chen, Dean Thompson, and several other faculty members who had gathered around her. Richard stood awkwardly at the edge of the group, his usual confidence completely deflated. Tom and Hank had already made their way to the bar, clearly eager to distance themselves from the morning's uncomfortable dynamic. Richard glanced at his watch repeatedly, searching for a graceful exit. The revelation about Maya's identity had left him feeling foolish and exposed. Every comment, every condescending piece of advice he had offered throughout their round, now played back in his mind with excruciating clarity. "Dr. Wilson, we should continue our discussion over lunch," the club president suggested. "The university's partnership with our junior golf program could benefit tremendously from your expertise." Maya nodded. "I'd be happy to. I've been developing a simplified version of my analysis method specifically for young players." "Brilliant," Dr. Chen exclaimed. "The applications for beginners could be revolutionary." Richard began inching away, hoping to slip off unnoticed. He had nearly reached the door when he heard Maya's voice. "Richard, will you be joining us for lunch?" All eyes turned to him. Under normal circumstances, being invited to dine with the club president would have been a point of pride for Richard. Today it felt like a spotlight on his humiliation. I have a prior commitment," he mumbled, unable to meet her gaze. "That's too bad," Maya said with genuine politeness. "I actually wanted to discuss that slice you've been fighting all day. I think I might have some insights that could help." Richard froze, caught between his desire to escape and his lifelong love of golf. The offer of help, real, expert help, was tempting, especially coming from someone he now knew was more than qualified to give it. "You want to help me with my swing?" he asked, his voice betraying his surprise. "Of course," Maya replied simply. "That's what fellow golfers do, isn't it?" There was no mockery in her tone, no hint of the satisfaction she could have rightfully taken in his discomfort. Just a straightforward offer of assistance. "I suppose I could delay my other plans," Richard said slowly. "If you really think you can help." "I believe I can," Maya said. "The physics of your slice is actually quite interesting." The group moved to a large table on the terrace overlooking the course. Richard found himself seated directly across from Maya, with Dr. Chen, Dean Thompson, and the club president filling the remaining chairs. Plates of food arrived, but Richard barely touched his club sandwich, his appetite diminished by the morning's events. "So, Richard," Maya began, "I noticed your slice begins with tension in your shoulders that transfers down to your grip. That tension creates a slightly outside-in path and an open club face at impact." Richard blinked in surprise. Her assessment was more precise than anything he'd heard from the club pros he'd worked with over the years. "The interesting thing about a slice," Maya continued, grabbing a napkin and sketching a diagram, "is that it's actually a complex interaction between angular momentum and aerodynamic forces." Dr. Chen nodded enthusiastically. "Dr. Wilson's paper on spin dynamics revolutionized how we understand ball flight." "I've tried everything," Richard admitted, his frustration momentarily overcoming his embarrassment. "New clubs, different grips, lessons with 3 different pros. The equipment and technique matter," Maya acknowledged. "But understanding the underlying physics can make adjustments more intuitive." "May I see your grip for a moment?" Hesitantly, Richard demonstrated his grip on an imaginary club. "Just as I thought," Maya said. "You're creating tension here and here." She pointed to specific pressure points in his hand position. "It's causing a chain reaction through your swing path." The club president leaned forward with interest. "I've had the same issue for years. Never heard it explained that way." "Try relaxing these 2 fingers slightly," Maya suggested to Richard, "and focus on maintaining that relaxation throughout your backswing." "That's it? Just relax those fingers?" Richard asked skeptically. "For starters," Maya replied. "The full correction involves understanding the kinetic chain from your stance through impact. But this simple adjustment might make an immediate difference." Dean Thompson laughed. "That's Dr. Wilson's gift, making complex physics practical and accessible." As lunch continued, Richard found himself drawn into the conversation despite his initial discomfort. Maya explained concepts he'd never considered: how humidity affected ball flight, why certain times of day changed the behavior of the greens, how minute adjustments in weight distribution could dramatically improve consistency. "I've been playing golf for 30 years. the club president commented, and I'm learning things I never knew existed. Richard nodded reluctantly. It's impressive, he admitted. After lunch, Maya glanced at her watch. I actually have a few hours before I need to head back to the lab. Would anyone be interested in playing the back nine again? I'd love to demonstrate some of these concepts in action. I'm in, the club president said immediately. Chance to learn from the best? Wouldn't miss it. I'd join you, but I have a faculty meeting, Dr. Chen said apologetically. Same here, added Dean Thompson. Everyone looked at Richard. Part of him wanted nothing more than to escape, to put as much distance as possible between himself and the morning's embarrassment. But another part, the part that truly loved golf, was genuinely curious. I suppose I could play a few more holes, he said tentatively. 20 minutes later, Richard found himself standing on the 10th tee again, this time with just Maya and the club president for company. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the fairway, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. Before you hit, Maya said to Richard, try the grip adjustment I suggested. And one more thing, exhale slowly as you start your downswing. Richard felt strangely nervous, like a student performing for a teacher. He adjusted his grip, feeling awkward with the unfamiliar pressure points. It doesn't feel right, he complained. New movement patterns rarely do at first, Maya explained. Your body has developed muscle memory around your current swing. It takes time to create new patterns. Richard took a deep breath, tried to relax his shoulders as Maya had suggested, and swung. The ball flew straighter than any drive he'd hit all morning. Landing in the center of the fairway, he stared in disbelief. That worked. Physics usually does, Maya said with a smile. Now let me show you something about weight transfer on your second shot. As they continued through the back nine, Richard found himself asking questions that he would have considered beneath him just hours earlier. Each time Maya answered thoughtfully, explaining complex concepts in terms he could understand and apply. Why does the ball sometimes balloon into the wind, even with a lower lofted club? He asked as they walked down the 12th fairway. That's about spin dynamics, Maya replied, launching into an explanation of backspin, rates and air pressure differentials that somehow made perfect sense when she described it. The club president whistled in appreciation after Maya demonstrated a shot that utilized precisely the principles she had just explained. You quite literally practice what you preach. Golf is my laboratory, she replied. Each swing is a chance to test theories in real-world conditions. By the 15th hole, Richard had experienced several breakthroughs. His drives were straighter, his iron shots more consistent. More significantly, his understanding of why certain adjustments worked had deepened beyond anything he'd learned in decades of playing. I've spent thousands on lessons, he admitted as they waited at the 16th tee, and never gotten this kind of improvement in a single round. Most instructors focus on replicating positions, Maya explained, but understanding the forces at work helps you make adjustments on your own in real time. The club president nodded. This is why we need that junior program partnership, Dr. Wilson. Imagine teaching kids these principles from the beginning. As they finished the 18th hole, the sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky. Richard's final drive had been his best of the day. Long, straight, and with the gentle draw that had eluded him for years. That felt different, he said, watching his ball roll to a stop in perfect position. Different how? Maya asked. Richard considered the question. Easier, less forced. Like I was working with the club instead of fighting it. Maya nodded. That's exactly what happens when you align your movements with the physics instead of against them. As they walked toward the green, Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. I appreciate the help today. It's been illuminating. Happy to share what I know, Maya replied. And Richard hesitated, clearly struggling with what to say next. I should apologize for my behavior this morning. It was, inappropriate. The club president raised an eyebrow but said nothing, giving Richard space to continue. I made assumptions that were... Richard paused again, searching for words. Well, they were wrong and disrespectful. Maya studied him for a moment. Thank you for acknowledging that. It's just... Golf has always been... Richard gestured vaguely with his hands. It's been my world. The one place where I felt I knew everything. Finding out how much I don't know is unsettling. Learning usually is, Maya said, but it's also what makes golf endlessly fascinating. No one ever truly masters it because there's always something new to discover. As they approached the clubhouse after completing their round, Richard seemed lost in thought. The transformation wasn't complete. Years of ingrained attitudes couldn't change in a single afternoon. But something had shifted. The seeds of a new perspective had been planted. Dr. Wilson, the club president said as they reached the parking lot, "I'll email you about that junior program proposal tomorrow." "I look forward to it," Maya replied. As the president walked away, Richard lingered awkwardly by Maya's car. "Will you be playing again next Sunday?" he asked, his voice uncertain. "Same time, 8:15, Maya confirmed. Richard nodded. Perhaps I could join you again? I have a lot more to learn, it seems," Maya smiled. Golf is always better with company. Even scientists need playing partners. As Richard watched her drive away, he stood a little straighter, already mentally reviewing the lessons of the day. The man who had arrived that morning so certain of his superiority was leaving with something far more valuable than pride. The humility to recognize how much he still had to learn, and from whom he might learn it. The week that followed their eventful golf round was a time of uncomfortable reflection for Richard. Each night he found himself replaying the events of that Sunday, cringing at his own behavior. The memory of his condescending comments, the assumptions he'd made, and the dismissive attitude he'd shown toward Maya haunted him. What made it worse was the grace with which she had handled the situation, offering him genuine help even after hours of enduring his rudeness. By Friday, Richard had made a decision. He needed to do more than just the brief, awkward apology he'd offered on the course. He asked the club secretary for Dr. Wilson's contact information, explaining that he wanted to send her a note regarding the university's junior golf program. It wasn't entirely a lie. He did want to support the initiative, but his primary motivation was more personal. After several attempts and crumpled drafts, Richard finally composed an email. "Dr. Wilson, I hope this message finds you well. I've been reflecting on our round last Sunday and my behavior toward you. My conduct was disrespectful and based on unfounded assumptions. There is no excuse for how I treated you, and I sincerely apologize. Your generosity in sharing your knowledge despite my attitude demonstrated a character I would do well to emulate. If you're amenable, I would like to make a donation to the junior golf program you discussed with the club president. Perhaps good can come from my poor behavior after all. Respectfully, Richard Harrington." He hit send before he could second-guess himself, then sat back in his chair, feeling a strange mixture of embarrassment and relief. Maya's response came the following morning. "Mr. Harrington, thank you for your message. Your apology is accepted. We all have moments we wish we could take back. What matters is how we choose to move forward. Regarding the junior program, your support would be welcome. I'm actually going to be at the club tomorrow afternoon at 3:00 to demonstrate some teaching techniques for the youth instructors. You're welcome to attend if you're interested in seeing what we're developing. Best regards, Dr. Maya Wilson." Richard read the email twice, surprised by the invitation. His first instinct was to decline, to make the donation anonymously and avoid facing Maya again. But something in her message challenged him. What matters is how we choose to move forward. Was he willing to do the uncomfortable work of moving forward, or would he hide from his mistakes? The next day, Richard arrived at the club's practice facility 15 minutes early. He spotted Maya immediately, setting up what looked like specialized training aids on the driving range. She was speaking animatedly to a small group of the club's teaching pros and junior instructors, who were nodding with interest. Richard approached hesitantly, hovering at the edge of the group until Maya noticed him. "Mr. Harrington." "Glad you could join us," she said, gesturing for him to come closer. "We're just setting up some demonstrations." The instructors glanced at Richard with surprise. His reputation at the club was well established, and his presence at a junior golf initiative was unexpected. Dr. Wilson was explaining how we can use basic physics concepts to help kids understand their swing mechanics. One of the younger instructors explained. "It's fascinating stuff. Please continue," Richard said, taking a position at the back of the group. For the next hour, Richard watched as Maya demonstrated teaching techniques that simplified complex physics into lessons children could understand and apply. She had created visual aids that illustrated concepts like energy transfer and rotational forces without using technical terminology. The key is making it intuitive, Maya explained, showing how a simple pendulum device could help young golfers feel the natural rhythm of a swing. Children don't need to understand the equations to benefit from the principles. During a break, Richard approached Maya. "This is impressive work," he said. "I've never seen these concepts presented so accessibly." "That's the goal," Maya replied. "Golf shouldn't be mysterious or exclusionary. The physics that make the ball fly are the same for everyone, regardless of background, gender, or natural ability." Richard nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to see that now." He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to do more than just make a donation. Is there some way I could be involved? Perhaps help with equipment or transportation for kids who can't afford it?" Maya studied him for a moment as if assessing his sincerity. "Actually, we do need volunteers who can help mentor the kids. Many of them have never been on a golf course before and feel intimidated by the environment. Someone to help them feel like they belong here," Richard said, understanding immediately. "Exactly. I'd like to try," Richard said. "If you think I'd be suitable?" "Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow," Maya replied, "including you." The first session of the expanded junior program took place the following Saturday. Richard arrived early, nervous but determined. He found Maya organizing equipment for the 20 children who would be arriving soon. "Thank you for coming," she said. "You know the club better than almost anyone. These kids will benefit from your experience." "I'm not sure what to say to them," Richard admitted. "How do I connect with them?" "Remember what it felt like when you first fell in love with golf," Maya suggested. "Share that joy. The rest will follow naturally." When the children arrived, a diverse group from neighborhoods across the city, Richard was initially stiff and awkward. But as the morning progressed, he found himself relaxing. He showed a 12-year-old girl how to line up a putt using the methods Maya had taught him. He helped a 10-year-old boy find a stance that felt comfortable. By lunchtime, he was surrounded by kids asking questions about the course, the game, and its history. "You're a natural," Maya commented as they watched the children practice. "I'm discovering that I enjoy sharing what I know when I'm not busy trying to prove I'm superior," Richard replied with unexpected self-awareness. Over the following weeks, the junior program flourished. Word spread about the innovative teaching methods being used, and other clubs began sending representatives to observe. Maya's physics-based approach, combined with the dedicated mentorship from volunteers like Richard, was producing remarkable results. Children who had never held a golf club before were developing solid fundamentals in record time. Richard's transformation became a topic of quiet conversation among club members. The man who had once been known for his exclusionary attitudes was now regularly seen patiently working with children from diverse backgrounds, genuinely celebrating their progress. One Sunday morning, nearly 2 months after their fateful round, Richard and Maya found themselves paired together again for an early tea time. As they walked down the first fairway, Richard shook his head with a rueful smile. "I barely recognized the man I was that day," he said. "Looking back, I'm ashamed of how I behaved." "We all have blind spots," Maya replied. "The question is whether we're willing to see them when they're pointed out to us." "You know, I've belonged to this club for over 25 years, Richard said thoughtfully. "I always thought I was protecting something valuable, traditions, standards, but all I was really doing was limiting who could benefit from them. And now I understand that the game is bigger than any club or tradition. It's about the joy of learning, of improving, of challenging yourself." He paused. "You taught me that. You were ready to learn," Maya said simply. When they reached the clubhouse after their round, they found several board members gathered on the patio. The club president waved them over. "Perfect timing," he said. "We were just discussing the success of the junior program. Membership applications are up 30%. And we've received inquiries from 3 national golf organizations about our teaching methodology. Dr. Wilson deserves all the credit," Richard said immediately. "Actually," the president replied, "we've heard from several parents that your mentorship has made a significant difference, Richard. Your knowledge of the club's history and traditions, combined with Dr. Wilson's innovative teaching